Welcome, everybody. I'm Laura Franco, the CEO of Brave Healer Productions, where we have a mission to change the world one brave word at a time around here. And today we're here to celebrate one of our newest books, The Ultimate Guide to Self-Healing, Volume 5. 5, you guys. Like, do you even know how exciting this is? So some of you who have been following the Brave Healer Productions journey know that this 5th book in the series is part of an incredible journey that started on March 20th, 2020. Anyone have that before and after story? I know I'm not going to be the only one, right? But I woke up that day having a dream about doing a book collaboration with my healer friends. And I literally got up out of bed that morning, walked to the kitchen, opened up the laptop, typed in a little note in a Facebook group that I run for a class that I teach. And I said, listen, the world needs to understand how to heal at home right now. Who wants to write a chapter for this book that I want to do? And 48 hours later, I had 24 people say yes. 5 weeks after that, the book was born on Amazon. Like, what? Like, this just doesn't happen in the book world, y'all. It's a small miracle. So that book and each of the next 3 Amazon best-selling volumes have been out-changing the world over the last year and a half. And today I have the author experts for Volume 5 with me. I'm super excited that you're here today. Maureen Mays is a 4-time published author of poetry and fiction. Melissa Wohlberg is the founder of Breathe Free Physical Therapy and Yoga LLC, where she offers workshops in integrative health physical therapy to improve quality of life. Pat Perrier is a yoga teacher, editor, writer, and Renaissance woman who believes in the potential of every person. And she tries through her work with students and authors to bring out their best so their light shines farther than they could have imagined. I have Sue McDonald with me. She's an executive coach, team developer, and psychotherapist who loves working with people to help them remember who they truly are. Welcome, ladies. I'm so glad you're here today.
Happy to be here.
Thank you. Yes.
Thank you.
All right,
Very
Maureen, let's start the party with you. So tell me about this amazing chapter that you wrote.
Well, I'm chapter 7. The name of my chapter is Strategic Critical Thinking, How to Make Intentional Decisions. So this chapter is very near to my heart because I'm a mother. I'm a mother of 2 teenagers, 1 boy, 1 girl, 16 and 18. So you can imagine what my life looks like. Not only am I a mother, but as Laura stated, I'm a 4-time published author, as well as a serial entrepreneur. And people often ask me, how do you find the time? And it's all about being intentional, right? Being intentional and making decisions that will follow through with your intentions. So that's what my chapter is about, talking about that story about how I navigated to now.
So, decision-making can really bog people down. And I think it's because there's confusion. They're looking for the right answer. And so share your process for getting to that answer. Everyone's is a little different.
Oh, sure. So my process has everything to do with my goals, my objectives, as well as my desires and my dreams. I like to look at it as a triangle. And when you think about a triangle, it has 3 points. So when I start that process of being intentional, all 3 points have to align. It has to align to where I'm trying to go. So that's my process, along with prayer.
Alignment is super important. I use body awareness for mine. and I'll feel into the answer to something. There's a definite yes and a definite no in my body. So I learned to tune in. Do you check in with that kind of language, or are you checking in with something different?
I'm going to say yes, because I am a firm believer of prayer, and I believe that God can talk to you in various ways. You know, he's an amazing God. So he can use your body. He can use the weather. He can use someone in the physical form. You, like you said, it all has to do with being aligned. And when you're aligned, you can better hear whatever that answer is.
Yes. Awesome, Maureen. Thank you. So Melissa, let's move to you. Talk about your amazing chapter next.
Okay. My amazing chapter is chapter 14. It's called Your Breath is Your Superpower. And it's 3 steps to ease chronic pain, stress, and anxiety. And it's a very similar, actually, before and after story, as you had stated. I had a breakthrough treatment with a patient one day where I truly saw right in front of my eyes how you can use different mindfulness and breathing exercises to control your body. And it was fascinating to me. And this was right before the pandemic. And then the pandemic hit and we were closed, and I decided that I was going to learn more about this. And I studied for probably 6 to 9 months about breathing and exercises and mindfulness and how to use that to help not only control stress and anxiety, but also chronic pain. And a lot of it is based on research that I've found in the PT world, but also in the yoga and neuroscience world. And it's been fascinating to see how people are coming on the other side of all of this.
Well, so talk to me a little bit more about the stress relief aspect. Like,
Okay.
what are you seeing people experience, and then how are they getting to feeling better?
Okay. So a lot of the techniques that I'm teaching will not only help in the moment to reduce the stress response in your body, it actually starts to stimulate the relaxation response in your body. And so in the moment, you will start to feel better. But then what happens is there's a cumulative effect over time. So it not only changes your brain wiring, your brain structure, but even the way that your genetic makeup is expressed. And then the third process that I haven't mentioned, so there's a mindfulness piece to it, there's breathing exercise piece to it. There's also a specific journaling exercise that is really gonna, is kind of that third step in the process. Once you go through the first 2, you use these techniques to get through the third step. And that's the more challenging step, where you have to really be aware, that awareness piece, and you have to really realize, what is it that is causing me these problems?
Yeah, awareness is everything. I'm going to be asking you all a little bit more about that as we go. But with the awareness, then we get a choice to respond. We get a choice, period, right? It's really a profound thing to think about and to practice. I appreciate the way that you all speak about your different practices, because we need all the voices. You guys know that one of the missions here is to share all of the different kinds of voices, the way that we can talk about this, all of the different kinds of tools. I particularly appreciate you all for, not just saying like yes to the project, but saying, yeah, I'll share a real vulnerable story. And then, yeah, I'll take on the challenge of writing out that tool in a way that the reader can really understand it. Because you can hear Melissa talk about, well, if there's this step and then there's this step, and she brilliantly taught in that chapter how to actually do it. That was one of my biggest missions for this, is that we could sit down, because in the beginning of COVID, you couldn't go out to your hands-on healers, and everybody lost everybody in terms of how they were getting support and love, and even being able to have a conversation about healing, right? So thank you all for stepping up so brilliantly this way. Pat, how about you? Tell us about your chapter.
Well, I came a little late to the book, and we have flexibility. It's a great thing.
Thank you for that.
Yeah, you're very welcome. Thank you. My chapter is chapter 3, and it's called Human After All: How to Release Expectations with Visualizations. And when I was thinking about what to write about, I realized that as a yoga teacher and as a hyper flexible individual, although my family will tell you I'm not hyper flexible from here up, that, injuries happen. And I had a fairly significant injury, and I had to release a lot of expectations about what I would be.
Uh-oh, did Pat freeze you guys? You froze, Pat. Is the wonder of Zoom. Let's see if she comes back to us. Oh, there she is. Okay, start again, Pat. You froze a little.
Okay, sorry. Yeah, I saw that. I wrote about acceptance and finding the space in your new limitations.
Uh-oh, she's freezing again, isn't she? All right. I love it when people's faces freeze in a particular way. It's just, it's funny. All right, Pat, if you can still hear me, I'm going to come back to you. We're going to move to Sue for a moment and hear about her chapter, and then hopefully we'll get Pat back to talk about hers. Sue, tell us about your amazing chapter.
Well, hi, everyone. I am chapter 22, which is Essence, Integration, and Inner Child Exercise for Full Empowerment. And I think since I was 3, my mum said I've been really interested in what's going on for other people and probably not as interested in what's going on for me. And so I've always been able to help other people manage their emotions. And I suppose the healing journey for me was really to connect back into my own journey. And part of that was a frozen part of me that was a child, because I had a traumatic incident happen with my sister when I was 9, and everything sort of stopped then. So for me, the chapter is really about helping people to reconnect to that inner child part of themselves, because often it's not 51-year-old Sue McDonald that's responding when I'm reactive. It's the 5, 6, 7, 8-year-old in me. And so as we reconnect to those parts of us, we can heal them and accept them. As the other authors have said, it's a similar journey.
That particular awareness is so important. I love what you just said about usually it's the child reacting. Tell me a little bit more about that. Why is that so important to understand when that's happening?
Well, I think then you mentioned a few moments ago, Laura, we have choice. And I think that's really connected to this part of us that actually, being able to, rather than actually reject that part of us and not accept it, it's actually about really checking in and going, okay, what part of me is triggered by what you've said? And I think as I've gotten older, I have a very different understanding of trauma. Trauma could be, I looked at my mum when I was a kid and she didn't look back at me, kind of thing. And that could play out in a relationship, or it could play out in a conversation with somebody. So it's really about understanding at the core of who you are, what your beliefs are, what's driving you. And then what of those, I don't really like to make things wrong. It's like, what of those are serving you and what are hindering you? So for example, I have a client at the moment who's very strong in perfectionism. And, she's really beating herself up for that perfectionism. And I'm saying, well, let's look at where it serves you. Like when you have to deliver a board paper, your perfectionism is really good because you're going to get that done and you're going to cross your T's and dot your I's. But perhaps in relationships, your perfectionism might be stopping you leaning into intimacy. So let's talk about where it's hindering you. And I just find that a more useful lens to look at the inner child through.
Yeah, really, really nice to be able to look at those aspects of yourself in both ways and not always have to lean into the negative. We do that so easily, don't we?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so so if Pat comes back, we'll get back to her and hear a little bit more about her chapter. But Melissa, I'm going to start with you for this next question. You know, I want to know how you feel when I say, why holistic when it comes to healing?
Well, that's an interesting concept. I think that unfortunately, a lot of medicine is reactionary for symptoms and not necessarily getting to the root causes of things. And there is so much that our body can do on its own when you know what to do. If you tap into different, depending on what type of system it is, whether it's an acupuncture system or a mind-body connection system or using your breath or whatever it is, I think that we have the power within. And so using as many tools that will work for you as possible, I think that it makes more sense than just treating the symptoms.
Oh yeah, oh my gosh, don't get me started on this one. Symptom. we could go into this conversation about, how Western medicine just piece parts people, first of all, but then just like puts Band-Aids over things. And right, yes. So thank you for that. That is one of the most important ways I think about holistic in terms of when we're on this healing journey. Pat, we're so glad you're back. Will you talk? I know. It's, it's just the name of the game here with the Zooming and the internet. Let's go back and just have you spend a minute talking about your chapter. And then I'm going to come back around to the rest of you on this, why holistic question. But Pat, tell us about that chapter that you wrote.
Okay. Well, again, it's chapter 3. It's called Human After All, How to Release Expectations with Visualizations. And the reason I wrote it is because I sustained a pretty serious yoga injury due to a lot of flexibility in my body. And if I'm really honest, a little bit of arrogance about my practice. And so I went where I shouldn't have gone. And now I'm learning the new way to practice with an unloader brace, which is awesome. If you think of a 16th century corset, you're real close. But, it's just a way to even relate to my students saying, look, everybody's got stuff. Even teachers have stuff. So I write about that, and I have been using visualization a lot in my own practice. And it's just a way to kind of close the tabs in the browser when you get a little overloaded.
So we were just talking about the why holistic question, and Melissa was saying how, if you just treat symptoms, you're never going to have that whole effective, long-lasting healing. I think a lot of us understand this, but there's also a lot of us who would love the quick fix when we're not feeling so good. So to add to that, Pat, why holistic in your world? Did she freeze up again? Oh my goodness, we're having a time with poor Pat. Okay, so Pat, there, there we go. I got you back. Why holistic, Pat?
Because we're not parts. We're unified between our body, mind, and our breath. And if we don't latch onto that unity, we're always going to be chasing something. We're going to be chasing the next thing, or we're going to be chasing the next trend. We're going to be chasing the next medical thing. Whatever it is, we have to start treating ourselves, and we have to start asking our medical providers to treat us like a unified thing, a unified being.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you for adding to that. this topic is sort of near and dear to my heart, you guys, in terms of like the very beginnings of my days as a physical therapist, and really understanding that if you were going to only treat one part, you know, both Pat and Melissa have talked about this already, then you're never going to have the full healing that you hope for. Right. So that is one of the ways is you can't just treat symptoms. You've got to get to the root cause. You can't just treat one part. You have to treat the whole being. So Sue, what do you want to add about that? Why holistic when it comes to healing?
Well, I think just to, I agree with everything everyone has said. And the only other thing I'd say is that I agree with Pat there about we are unity, we're not parts. But I think what happens is we divide ourselves into parts because of things that have happened to us in our life. And therefore, it's really important to find a way back to unity. And that's tricky. At least it's been tricky for me. And I think to facilitate that for people is really important. And also to realize that people have a choice, you know, in this as well. And I think the only other thing I'd say is that certainly in my experience, we give our power away a lot, whether that's to people in the medical profession, whether that's to, you know, authority figures. And so holistic also means to me coming back to the whole me self, like you said earlier, Laura, checking in with your body and going, does this feel right for my body? Because no one else can tell you that.
Yeah, really, really important. It's a good alignment check for me. I know a lot of you practice in those kinds of ways. I love that ad, Sue. Let's see if Maureen has something to add to this holistic topic here.
I would like to piggyback on what Melissa has shared. I really believe that we need to get back to proactive health instead of being so reactionary. I think that's the bottom line, because once you get to the point where you're being reactive, you don't allow yourself to move as a whole self, like Pat and Sue was sharing.
Yes, no doubt. You know, you guys, I think of this in one other way as well. In my practice with clients, it was about the whole body, literal body, head to toe. Like if they were coming in and their doctor wrote them a prescription for low back pain, and I didn't look at the neck and the shoulders and the whole system, the whole myofascial system, then that was one way I would miss something, right? So that's holistic to me. But the other big thing for me was if I never asked them how it was going in their life and what was up for them mentally, emotionally, spiritually, you know, I wouldn't know maybe that client had lost a loved one that week, who had lost a job, had made a major life transition. And that's the other way that I think about holistic, when in your beautiful chapters, you're all writing holistically, you're all taking into all of those aspects into consideration. And I think that's why this book is such a gift, because everybody is automatically going at the voice in their chapter that way. But I think some people don't even understand what that means, right? Hence the question today. I want you all to give them some ideas. So I appreciate all of your answers. It's really, really great to have a community to talk to about it, especially these topics. So Pat, I'm going to start with you for the next question. And here it is. This is coming around to all of you, okay? So I remember a moment when I experienced a session from somebody who practices biodynamic craniosacral therapy. That's a mouthful, right? And we had a phone session during COVID. She said to me, this is going to be the same as when we're in person. And I was like, okay, I'm pretty open-minded about all this kind of stuff. So I laid down in my own office on my yoga mat with my earphones on and we were talking on the phone, and that is how she delivered this session. And that day I realized what was possible in terms of energy medicine and healing. I'm not going to give you the long story about the different things I felt and what happened to me, but it was profound. So you all have had so many different aha moments as you've journeyed on this path. Pat, would you share one of the moments for you where you realized what was possible in terms of healing?
Yeah. Okay. So, I am working with a yoga therapist because my orthopedic guy said I could send you to therapy, but you're a yoga teacher and you're going to do 2/3 of it anyway. So I have a friend of mine, a dear friend who is a yoga therapist, and we did a body reading. I was in a therapeutic class where you volunteered to be read. And I'm like, whatever, this is what I have to offer. Just look at it and I don't get offended. And it struck me because I had my brace on, they were talking about the brace, and I was standing there in front of 15 people, 14 of whom I didn't know. And Linda had said to me, said to them, look at where her neck is and where her right arm is. And then she said, if I were to take a piece of string, you would see that this brace is spiraling her whole body around. And I kind of perked up and I thought, holy moly, this brace is supposed to be adducting my left hip, but it's really I'm compensating so hard against the brace. And here's a person saying to me, look at yourself again and see what I'm seeing. And it just meant, okay, there's a way around that. I can work with this brace instead of working against it, and then potentially at least ease what's going on. And I never connected it. She said, just, look at the way your one arm turns in and your one arm turns out. And I was just standing there unconsciously. I wasn't making a special effort to look taller or thinner. I mean, that's whatever, but it was just interesting to see what she saw and where I could make adjustments so I wasn't battling what was supposed to be fixing the problem.
Really nice. I would imagine you would all agree that a simple shift in perspective can be the healing moment. And then all of the possibility is there that you didn't have a minute before somebody helped you see something in a different way, right? This is what I love so much about this. Thank you for sharing that. Okay, Sue, your turn. Can you think of a moment where you realized what's possible?
Yeah, look, I've had a lot of injuries in my life with my legs in particular. And so there's something for me about not being fully grounded into the earth. It's much easier for me to do meditation and go off with the angels. So I think one of the things was a really simple movement, but an important one was listening to a poem one day, and there's a line in it that says something like, walk as if love would walk rather than fear. Something like that. I haven't done it justice. And so just that perspective, I noticed I moved my legs differently. And I forget that often, but when I remember, I can feel a whole shift in my body. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I love these stories so much, you guys. Thank you. And it really is I'm chuckling to myself because Maureen is next in this little lineup, and Maureen is a fellow poet. So she's, I'm sure, loving that you heard a line in a poem and your moment was about the line in the poem, because I've had that too. And I know Maureen has as well, probably writing and reading. Maureen, what about you? Tell us about an aha moment that you've had.
Oh, yes, I'm really loving you all's stories. So thank you for just being vulnerable and sharing. But that resonated with me, Laura, when you said a simple shift in perspective. And I got kind of lost in the stories and wasn't even thinking about my own story. So I guess a aha moment. There's so many, right? So one of my aha moments when I was going through my divorce and literally putting my life back together again is the moment when I realized that I can critically and strategically think for myself. I can do this. I have the power to do this. And it actually happened when I decided to go back to school because I dropped out of college and later on decided, you know what, I'm gonna go back and get my degree. And it was actually easier than what I thought. It was easier than what I thought. And the ability to put words together and create papers and to finish assignments and be able to be a part of the class as a participant and not just a wildflower on the wall, but to be able to have a seat at the table. So that's my simple shift in perspective.
I love it. And I love what you said about, and as a piece of what I loved about your chapter too, is, you know, those moments, especially, I'm going to just, commiserate with you for a moment in the year of a separation and divorce, because I do know how that feels too. And you took what could probably be like the hardest year of your life, and you're sharing a way to literally think, because when we're in the middle of the junk, sometimes all of that goes out the window and we just find ourselves, we don't even know who we are in those moments. And so what you did so brilliantly, Maureen, is gave us a structure there and said, hey, you know, this is, we can do this, and here's how we're going to do this, even though we might be in a really, really bad time. So thank you for that.
Oh, thank you.
Okay, Melissa, how about you? Got an aha moment for us?
I do have an aha moment for you, and I alluded to it a little bit when you asked me about my chapter.
I heard that.
So as I'm a physical therapist and I got certified in yoga, and soon after that, a patient came to me and she had a severe neurological disorder, which did not enable her to control her limbs. Okay. And by the time she got to me, her legs and toes and everything was constantly moving, whether she was sitting, standing, laying down. And I had never treated somebody with this condition before, but as a neurological physical therapist, I was trying my best to figure out, well, what will work. And I went at it with a very physical thought process. Well, it was mostly her right leg. By the time that I started to think about this, I'm like, oh, well, if you just weight shift to your right side, it won't move, you know, like things like that, like physically stopping it. And it was, and we only got so far with that, because how often can you just physically stop something from trying to move? And I had this breakthrough treatment where I said to her, do you trust me? Can we do something totally, totally different? Can we go to a separate room? And I was working at a hospital at the time, a separate room in the hospital. And can we just do something completely different? And she's like, I'll do anything you tell me. So we went through this experimental treatment where I was using these mind-body techniques. And I got her for the first time just by going through a series of awareness and progressive relaxation and breathing to get her to have her limbs and her toes and her feet and her legs completely still for the first time. It was the first time in probably 2 years that she was still. And it was incredible. It really was. It changed me. And it was right before the pandemic. And so I never went back to the hospital. I opened up my own business, and I am gearing ahead with this whole, with how you can shift to use your mind and your own body and your own power within, because it's more powerful than that physically trying to stop something from happening.
That is a big deal. Yes, I love it. I know it's so challenging to pick one moment, because I know you all have so many different moments along your journey where you are just waking up to these little possibilities and these little miracles of healing and the way that you integrate everything. So I know it's hard to talk about only one moment because there have been so many for you all. But I guess that's why I get so excited about the book and about you all coming together as a community to help people. And now I'm speaking to our viewers today. These authors are generously there for you to support your next steps. We didn't want to just put out books and then just leave you. We wanted to have you understand that we're here for the next step. We're here for the support. We're here for the conversations and all of those beautiful things. So you all can come into our community on Facebook, and I'll link you up down below, but you can also hook up with the authors on their websites in the show notes below as well, and explore and see what might work for you in terms of asking the next big question for yourself. This part excites me a lot. Okay, so Sue, I'm going to start with you on this next question. I'm coming around to all of you for this. And here it is. So when it comes to healing, most healers understand that we're not really here to fix people, that it's more about helping empower people to connect with their own inner healer. So we like to talk about ourselves as guides or facilitators. A lot of people don't like to say I'm a healer, right? Because all we're really doing is just guiding the journey for somebody else to kind of wake up to what's possible and spark that hope. So what I want to know from all of you, Sue first, what's one of the most important ways that you empower your clients?
So for me, I do a lot of work in the coaching world. So some of that work is quite cognitive. And so one of the ways is that I spoke earlier about people giving their power away, is people will often ask me as a therapist, what would you do? And I think I found myself in therapy being in a situation where you ask the therapist a question and they don't really give you an answer, they just turn the question back. And I don't feel that's very connecting. So I'm probably not saying the right thing here in terms of what I'm meant to do as a therapist. But I think one of the ways we can help people is to actually almost exhaust their brains first. By, because I think everyone has the answer within them, and then it's okay to share a perspective, but to make it very clear that it's your perspective and that they're the authority in their lives. And I think the second thing I'd say just on that is one of the things that I found very helpful for empowering people has been presence. So I did a session last week with the guy, and I swear I said two things in the whole 90 minutes I was with him. And he was leaving and he said, that's the best session we've ever had. And my ego was a bit hurt, but actually, like, I learned so much from that, from going just from this guy talking through his own process and really having space and time to process that was so powerful for him. And me just witnessing that was very powerful for me. So it's a real privilege.
I love that you're also being a skilled listener really does matter. And that's, I think, one of the things that you're talking about, because people can pretend they're listening, or they can really actively listen with their energy and hold a space for somebody. That's transformational. Awesome, Sue. Thank you for sharing that. Okay, so Maureen, what about you? How do you love to empower people that you work with?
I love to empower people by enforcing and encouraging them to own and tell their story. So many times we hold on to our stories as if they're only for us. I think our stories have the ability and power to liberate other people. They have the power to heal other people. And so when I'm dealing with people I'm working with, whether I'm doing ghostwriting or some type of coaching someone through their books or anything like that, or even when I'm doing a speaking engagement, I always like to tell people, tell your story. It's just not for you. So yes.
Oh, I love that one. I love that one. Yes, that is a yes with an exclamation point at the end. And I'm just going to give Maureen a shout out in terms of her poetry, y'all, because it's powerful. Sometimes I've laughed and cried in the same poem with you. Your poetry is just amazing. So I love it. So y'all need to go check that out. Okay. All right. So Melissa, how about you? How do you love to empower people when you work with them?
I think everything that I'm doing, this whole shift, is about empowering each person. And I love, Maureen, what you said. I run several groups, and in the groups, the whole reason why I like to have it as a group is I feel that people can learn from each other, and they feel good when they're telling someone else about their story. You're right. And then that person's relating to them and they're telling them about their story, and there's like these connections, and it's like people start to feel better right away, even before I've even taught them anything, and then I start to teach them things, and they go home and they practice, and they come back and they're so excited that they've been empowered, right, by their stories, by these tools. And it's fascinating to watch, week after week. And when they graduate, the group that I've created, or that was created by them. So it's amazing.
I love that, Melissa. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Pat, you're going to close this party out today. Talk to us a little bit about how you love to empower your clients.
Hey, well, as a little something for each of us, there is a quote by Alice Walker that says the most common way that people give away their power is by thinking they don't have any. So that's hanging above my desk, just as a little reminder. And what I like is the somewhat of a quantum shift that's been happening in the yoga world lately, where when I was first trained, we all put our right foot in front and took our left foot 3 feet back and raised our arms to shoulder level and turned our hips out and did the pose, and were expected to look like everybody else in class. But the shift now is the light bulb went off and the yoga world went, holy crap, people have skeletons that are different. So my triangle does not look like anybody else's in this group. So what I like to tell my students is that when we're in class, there is no cookie cutter here. If your hip moves, then your hip moves. I'm just going to, if your knee isn't where it should be, I'll tell you, because you never mess with the knees. But if your arms aren't straight, that's because of where they connect in your shoulder. If your hip is not at a certain angle, that's where the head of your femur goes into the socket. We can't change bone. We work with it. We work around it sometimes, but to allow them to make the pose as much as they can about themselves while keeping it safe. And then being present in the pose. So it's like your skeleton's going to hold you up, but what's your body doing and where is your mind at when you're in that pose? So it's always bringing them back to the sensation, the breath, the thought. I mean, if you're thinking, is she ever going to let me out of this pose? Then reassess why you're thinking that, So it's giving them control over their practice within the guidelines that I can to still keep them safe and keep their joints healthy and keep their practice a lifelong practice.
I love I'm such an anatomy geek. So I'm like listening to this bone and this socket. And then I'm like, yes, tell me more.
The head of the femur into the acetabulum, if you really want it. There you go. There's your geek.
Yes, I know. I love it. and the awareness that you're giving people. But that, the thing about being in a class, anyone else competitive like me? So, you know, you're looking around and you're looking at all the warrior poses and you're like, oh my gosh, my thing doesn't look exactly the way that, you know, but that's awesome. I love thinking about just staying within where I am in my place in my body and understanding it from that perspective. That is awesome.
Yeah, it's totally what's happening on your mat.
Yeah. That's half the battle in a yoga class, honestly, is the mental piece.
Yep.
And keeping yourself present in your own body. Amazing, really. So to our viewers today, you may have heard something that really resonated with you from Pat, Melissa, Sue, Maureen. Please just roll on down into our show notes. I have everybody hooked up there with their websites. Take the next step, take an exploration with one of our author experts. Our book is coming out, of course, and you're going to have their chapters to read, their tools to practice. Yes. But I want you to know that they're there for you in terms of supporting the conversation and just taking it that next place, which is really important to have people like that are in your inner circle and helping you out. And of course, they're there in that way. We also have a group. I'm going to put the link in the show notes for you as well, where you can rub elbows with all of our authors from all 5 of our volumes. That's an incredible community waiting to help you out. Authors today, thank you so much for what you do in the world and for being here today to share it with everyone. Y'all are awesome.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you, Laura. Yes.
Thanks, Laura.
So
Good to see you all.
remember, everybody, please join us for our live stream book celebration. That's going to be December 17th at 10 a.m. Eastern. I am going to be gathering with all of the Ultimate Guide to Self-Healing authors. We're going to be doing some really fun giveaways that day. You'll find that on the Brave Healer Productions Facebook page. I've got that link down below too. And if you're listening after the 17th, hop over to Amazon, because that means the book is ready for you to grab a copy. And maybe you are a wellness practitioner who's ready to share your brave words in one of our upcoming best-selling book collaborations. Please find more at bravehealer.com. I can't wait to talk to you about that. And lastly today, everyone, just remember, your words change the world when you're brave enough to share them. So it's time to be brave. See you next time, everyone. Thank you, ladies.
Thank you.
Thanks, Laura. Thanks, guys.